This is an interview with John S. Latta, Ph.D., Emeritus Professor of Anatomy, University of Nebraska, College of Medicine. The date is July 2nd, 1979. I am Bernice Hetzner, the Emeritus Professor of Library Science. Dr. Latta, would you mind telling me the story about how you happened to come to Nebraska?
I was at a meeting of the American Association of Anatomists in Philadelphia in 1921, I think it was. And I happened to see an exhibit put on by Professor C.W.M. Pointer from Omaha. And I was rather interested in the exhibit and Dr. Pointer, because he was quite a personality. And I mentioned this when I got back home to Ithaca to a fellow professor, Dr. Papes, and he happened to mention seeing the same exhibit, and I said, well, I must be looking around for a place to go, because it'll be a long time before I can advance much here. And he said, why didn't you let me know while we were there? Because Dr. Pointer told me that he was looking for a man. I will write to him tonight. And he apparently did write to him that night, and within a very few days, I got a letter from Dr. Pointer telling me about the position and what they could offer in the way of compensation, and asked if I was interested, and if I were, would I give my qualifications, which I promptly did, and sent it to him. And within a few more days, I got a letter back from Dr. Pointer saying that he was recommending me for the position of Assistant Professor of Anatomy. And a few more days after that, I got a note from Dr. Irving S. Cutter, who said that I had been appointed as an Assistant Professor of Anatomy. It's interesting to note between you and me that the person who wrote the letter was my future wife. I thought that was kind of it. So that's how I came to Omaha, because my chief, Dr. Kingsbury, at Ithaca, said, well, that's a very good offer. And we, incidentally, we had another of his students that had been made assistant professor of anatomy out at the University of Colorado just a couple of years before. So that kind of interested me too. So that's how I came to Omaha.
That's great. Let's check. Now, when you arrived in Omaha and came to the campus, what was the campus like at that time, 1921?
We had 3 buildings. It was the first unit of the hospital, the North Laboratory Building, and the South Laboratory Building. There was a building behind the one unit of the hospital, which was called the Nurses' Home, which was a stucco building, which later burned down, so that they had quite a time. There was another building being erected, though, and that was the Comping Hall. It was in the process of being erected. But in that interim, there was quite a little difficulty housing the nurses.
Well, that interests me because I had always thought that the nurses' home, the dormitory that burned, was behind the hospital.
That's right.
But recently, someone tried to persuade me that it was down where the service building is now.
Well, that's...
Did they have 2 places?
They may have temporarily had some place for him there. I don't recall that. But when I came here, this was a stucco building behind the first unit of the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when they burned down, they cleaned that all out and put in a tennis court right
Yes.
behind the first unit.
Yes.
And I used that quite a bit.
You were a tennis player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I enjoyed tennis for a long while. Until Dr. McQuitty told me I'd better stop. But I was breathing too hard when I ran to the net.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had a real good time. There's 2 or 3 graduate students around that I played tennis with after I got through work about 5 o'clock or a little later.
This was before you were married?
Yes, and in the basement of the North Building they had showers, too. So
Oh, sure.
they used to have all the medical students take showers after they've been in the gross laboratory. Whether they do that now, I have some doubts.
Well, I'm happy to have this cleared up a bit about the nurses' dormitory, because the pictures I have show a building behind the hospital. The pictures that the College of Nursing now has in their historical review appear to be maybe surplus Army barracks. Do you remember any building on the campus that looked like that?
The only other building on the campus that I recall was a building which housed the carpenter shop. It housed the carpenter shop and the electrician shop.
Where was that?
That was straight west of the North Building.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And underneath that was a garage housing the dean's car.
Let me ask you this. Did the college furnish the dean's car, or did he furnish his own?
Well, I'm sure he furnished his own, but they furnished the quarters.
I think so.
Yeah.
So.
But they had one carpenter and one electrician. That was the workforce. Aside from janitor force, of course.
Uh-huh. And there was only one unit in the hospital.
That's right.
Yeah.
Uh,
How many students did they have in the freshman
They had
class?
96 students.
96 students.
And they,
Were they all Nebraskans, or did they come from?
no, but most of them are. Practically all of them were. I don't remember how many outsiders we had, but there were some.
Mm-hmm. How many women?
I don't think there were any women in the first class, but in the second class there were 1 or 2 women. But that was an unusual event to have women in the class, but Dr. Pointer and Dr. Carter both conceded that women had just as good a right to study medicine as anybody else. They just didn't want to. That's apparently true. But there was no objection to having them in it. Of course, I will have to admit that the women sometimes took a rough going from the fellow students.
I'm sure they
Because
did.
they would tell bawdy stories and things like that kind of see if the little girl could get shot by it. But otherwise, they were acceptable always. Through all my career. And some of them were very brilliant, too, as a matter of fact.
Their record was as good as the
In
fellows.
fact, one year, I can't remember the year, but one year there were 2 girls who were number 1 or 2 in the class. But they didn't actually practice medicine the way the other people would, because one went into pediatric research in Denver, and the other one went into work at Smith College. She was a graduate of Smith. You probably knew her. Booth, Marion Booth was her name.
I remember the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was the head of the student health service or something of the kind of Smiths for many years until she's now passed away.
At one time, you had a school for morticians in the anatomy department, didn't
Not
you?
in my time.
No?
No. We taught them ourselves. You'd get, during my whole career, we would hire morticians from town who had learned their embalming business elsewhere. And we had a pretty rough time with some of them because they weren't very reliable all of them. But during my time as chairman of the department, I had a man from in town here who he would come any time and embalm the bodies, and we paid him a certain salary. But he was available, and he was pretty adequate. But some of the boys that we had earlier were very unreliable, and one of them actually had developed cerebral Louis, and he went almost crazy before we finally had to get rid of him. He was a very good embalmer, a very good man at his work, but he was unpredictable otherwise.
I see.
But that's as far as we went. We did explain to him what we wanted done and what the embalming clothes were. That was up to the state anatomical board.
I see.
To decide that business. And the school paid a certain amount to depend on what our total expenses were, and Creighton paid the rest of it. And we charged the Department of Dentistry, the College of Dentistry, for the bodies we shipped to them, according to what the body cost was in embalming. And most of the bodies which were received were unclaimed dead in the older days. And nowadays, there's some good many people that will their bodies to anatomy for research or for medical instruction.
This is still under the state anatomical board.
Well, now,
guidelines are...
as far as I know, it's still the
control.
state anatomical board, yeah. But that was a state law. It was established by state law. And it worked very well during my time. We were almost overcome with bodies during some of these days during the Depression years, we had a transient shelter downtown. And a lot of people would come to that transient shelter and die there, and we had about twice as many bodies as we needed some of the time for instruction purposes. But we lived through that all right. We lived through a lot of experiences I wouldn't want to put on record.
You mean during the 30s Depression years?
Well, I'm thinking of some of our troubles with these embalmers that we hired. I shouldn't put it down off the tape.
The department or division or what you might want to call it of medical illustration was part of the anatomy department for years, was
Well, we had an anatomical illustrator, and that was Miss Reynolds.
Yes.
And after some years working for Dr. Pointer, or for me, after he left to become the dean, she worked for me. Dr. Lowell Dunn conceived the idea that he could use part of her time and he would help pay for it, her salary. And that's when she first began to split off as a medicalist. As a as an illustrator in the department, she did lots of outside work for the doctors, the volunteer staff who were on campus. And we had a very nice relationship there for many years. And when she didn't have anything to do in anatomy, illustration, photographic or drawing, why she would work for these other people. And that was entirely voluntary. I mean, it was up to them to pay her if they wanted to. And some of them paid her, some of them didn't. But she was very happy doing it, apparently.
Well, I remember she made designs and drawings
Right.
for the library.
Oh, sure.
Book plates.
Sure.
And,
She was an all-around person, and very, very good at photomicrography too. We did a lot of work of various kinds, she was the author or the illustrator in many publications, and she worked for Dr. Keeler quite a bit, you know.
Yes.
After he left the deanship.
Tell me a little bit more about Dr. Pointer.
Dr. Pointer was one of the most interesting men I ever knew. He was very open and friendly about everything. And he was, his father had been a populist governor of Nebraska, and he learned a lot of techniques there, I think, which stood him in good stead. And he was very well known in anatomical circles, and he was an excellent teacher of anatomy. He had been a surgeon, the adjunct professor of anatomy when he was a surgeon at Lincoln, and he thought he had acquired tuberculosis, and he was advised to quit his practice, and that's when he became the professor of anatomy. So he had the background of knowing what some of the medical problems surgeons had, and he knew how to instill that information into students, and he was a very excellent professor of anatomy and a very great student of the history of anatomy, as you probably know yourself.
Also, wasn't he interested in anthropology?
Yes, he was. You're right. You're quite right. He worked with this artist
Gilder,
Dr. Gilder, for quite a number of times. They went on digs over to those old campsites on the bluffs in Council Bluffs, out of Council Bluffs. And I right now have a picture of one of those skulls they excavated, which Gilder painted. I have it in my office right now. And I think that was a very interesting part of Dr. Pointer's background. They once had Herlitzky, who was a famous anthropologist, and Herlitzky kind of brushed everything, all their work off, and that kind of cooled him off a little bit. But he did have great interest in anthropology.
Tell me something about what you remember about Dr. Cutter.
Dr. Cutter was a very, he came here before my time as a professor of biochemistry, and he was secretary of the faculty. And the dean was W.O. Bridges. And Dr. Bridges soon tired of the job, and Dr. Cutter sort of inherited it. And he really developed the place considerably. He had a great deal of talent in convincing the authorities in Lincoln, that is, the authorities in the university, and the legislature, both, that we needed money, and they needed plenty of it, and that's the reason the place grew as it did during his period. And I think it was during his time that they just collected enough money to build a second unit of the hospital. And during his tenure as dean, Conking Hall was erected. And I swear that almost every piece of pipe that went in there he inspected before. It was very, and he was well known in academic circles, and he became the president of the Association of Medical Colleges for a period.
He held offices in AMA too, didn't he?
He what?
Didn't he hold an office in the AMA?
I don't know about that.
Well,
I do know that he was the Association of American Medical Colleges, and they had an annual meeting here at one time, and that's very, very interesting. I attended many of those meetings myself, so I was very, very well aware of Cutter's abilities, and so were some other people, because shortly after this meeting here, he was offered the deanship of Northwestern Medical School, and went to Northwestern, and he promptly became well acquainted with the Montgomery wards and people of that kind, and it didn't take time at all for him to really build that place up.
I understand that some of the people from here went to Northwestern.
Sanford Gifford was one of them. I remember, and he became the chief ophthalmologist at Northwestern Medical School, and he was a real brilliant man. That's Harold Gifford's older brother. Yeah.
Didn't the librarian go to Northwestern also at that time?
The librarian, during that time that he was, there was a Wilson.
Hallie Wilson.
Yeah. Now, whether she went to Northwestern, I don't know. I don't recall that.
We can check it out. Yeah. Well, now, was there anything to the rumor or the innuendos that Dr. Orr put out, that there was a feud between Pointer and Cutter?
No, I heard the same rumors.
Was it apparent to you?
It was. There was something was apparent to me, and that is when Dr. Cutter resigned as dean here, he made a recommendation. Now, obviously the one that, at least that's what I thought, and what many other people thought. The obvious man to replace him was Dr. Pointer. But Dr. Pointer didn't replace him. And Dr. Keegan was director of the dispensary at that time, and Dr. Cutter recommended him for the job. And that's when there began to be fairly obvious that there wasn't any love lost between the two of them.
Well, according to the story I heard, Dr. Pointer was on the faculty when Cutter went through school, and he flunked him in
Well, I didn't know that. He never told me that.
Well,
I mean, Pointer never.
Maybe there's no basis for this story at all, but...
Yeah, but Cutter, Pointer was Dr. Pointer was a real character around here, and everybody knew him, and everybody respected him. And Dr. Cutter was a character, and everybody knew him and respected him in different ways. And I think there was a little jealousy, shall we say, between the two, because they were both very prominent characters in the early medical history here. So that's the only thing I could think of was causing a rift between them was a little jealousy. Yeah. But that was never very obvious until to me it wasn't very obvious until Dr. Pointer did not get the position immediately after Cutter left.
After Cutter left, yeah. Well, it was about this time that they opened Unit 2 of the hospital.
Well, that
Keegan
was started. Keegan
yeah.
was dean.
Yeah.
Became dean, and he superintended the building of the second unit.
Mm-hmm.
And they still say that there was just one mistake made in building the hospital, and that is that the width of the building was such that you could hardly get beds in and out. So you had supposed to have beds on each side of a center aisle.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult physically to move beds from one part to another because of the narrowness of the whole building.
Well, this was in the initial planning then.
That's right.
Perhaps.
Because the second unit was almost exactly like the first.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you wanted to discuss the movement of the library to that second unit.
Yeah. Well, is it true that the library really got its start under Dr. Cutter?
That's right. And Dr. Cutter actually gave money, or he gave permission, I better put it that way. He gave permission to Dr. Crummer to pick up any old historical volumes that he thought were valuable when he made the occasional trips to Europe. And he did make several trips to Europe, and many trips to Europe, and he picked up the first of our historical collection, I would say. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Cutter would find the money to pay for it after he got home.
Some way, yeah.
And he was quite an operator, Dr. Cutter, and there's no doubt about it. And he was a very good friend of Mr. Wires.
Oh, the librarian in Lincoln,
yeah.
Malcolm Wires.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
mm-hmm.
he understood the problem.
Yeah.
And apparently he found the money. And Dr. Cutter, both Dr. Cutter and Dr. Pointer were well acquainted with him. And he thought that was a real good chance to improve his image. I mean, Mr. Wire.
Yeah.
And it was a good chance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where Mr. Lundy fell apart because he didn't see that at all.
Well, the library was in the north building when you first came?
It was in the first unit of the hospital when I came.
It had been moved to the first unit
It had
of the
been
hospital.
moved. I remember seeing where it had been in the second floor of the north building, and we inherited all the shelving. Well, that was about as big as the shelving here. If you covered this whole wall, that was the hospital. That was the hospital or the medical college library.
Well, I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah.
Then it moved to the space above where the dean's office.
The dean's office. That's right. Well, the dean's office and the superintendent of nurse's office. It covered both sides, that end of that building. And that was when I knew is it Miss or Mrs. Wilson? But,
Miss, I believe.
Well, she was
Ellie
very,
Wilson.
I shouldn't say this, but she was very good friends of Dean and Mrs. Cutter. And that he used to spend a lot of time in the library, and that's how he got so interested in it. There's something else about that I ought to remember. Oh, Miss Phyllis came.
Miss
By the
Hillis
time we
came,
were still in those quarters.
up over the dean's
Yeah,
office.
yeah.
Yes. I believe she came in 22 or 23 or something like that.
Well, she was an assistant to the librarian at first, I
too.
think. And when Miss Woodson left, and who did she? I didn't when Philip Moore came. That was after.
Oh, no, that was after Miss Hillis.
Yeah.
Miss Hillis came, and then she recruited
But
Bill Evans.
She must have had somebody to help her. I could have the opportunity to work outside for 1/6 of his time. And that way he get some extra compensation. Well, that was created quite a furor in the place, and it actually didn't work very well because nobody ever figured out how much 1/6 time was in the first place and whether they were living up to their agreement or not. And some people, I know that some people didn't live up to their agreement. And do you suppose that Dean would have the courage to tell them that they were off the faculty because they hadn't lived up to their agreement? Well, it never happened, that's all. So it gradually evolved into letting them do as they pleased. But they still were supposed to be full-time on the faculty. And some of them actually left the school because they didn't want that restriction. And they went off over to the Clarkson or some other place, the doctor's building, and set up offices of their own. And however, right now, I think that's about the way most of them work. That is, they're here full-time, but they also have the privilege of having offices elsewhere.
But they ask them to report income. That's what
that's right.
the big fuss is about now.
Yeah, well, you see,
Report to whom and so forth.
But I remember the early hassle about it.
Then another hassle was when they decided to expand the campus. They got this $250,000 levy, and should they expand, they had some plans.
They had a plan to move everything across the street for a while. And that was Dr. Roy Hawley's idea, I think. But we had a faculty meeting over in Conklin Hall, I remember, and voted that down. But Lowell Dunn was just filled with excitement about expansion, and he set about to make up plans for expansion west, and I suppose that a deal of that expansion west now is an outcome of his early activities. But of course, the real expansion came about through Dr. Whitson, because he got the money and he got the consent and cooperation of the national group to help support it, and he and Dr. McGugan in respect to the library itself. But otherwise, that money came through Whitson's contacts with the Public Health Service. And that, to me, that was a step forward, but also a step backward. Because at the same time that they did that, they were beginning to go on a pay-as-you-go basis. Everybody had to be paid, and everybody had to be self-supporting. Every department was supposed to be self-supporting, and that's because we went out to Medicare and all this federal support for illness, and there were no longer any people who were totally charity cases, you see. So all that the old charity business is out the window.
Now it's all third party pay.
Yeah,
Some either the government or an insurance company.
that's
or
right.
Some,
That's right.
But-
And they take out any case now, and they would only accept charity cases in the good old days, as I say.
when you spoke about everybody is expected to make their own department pay, do you mean in terms of securing grants and
That's probably.
delivering service and
Well, that and serving the public in
Yeah.
such a way that they got enough in way of income from the fees to
Yeah.
take care of it and take care of their own salaries. But I don't know if they never did accomplish all that because the cost of operating a hospital is constantly going up, and the cost of a clinical faculty is constantly going up, and it's always constantly expanded. Part of that is inflation, but there's still another part, and that is the increase in the volume.
yeah.
So it isn't the same atmosphere that we once had, let's put it.
It's
Well, by the way,
not the way it was when we first became acquainted. We knew everybody on the campus.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I don't know anybody now. Of course, that's partly because I'm retired, but
Yeah.
and that's the same way with you, I suppose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There are people that
Well, I'm real proud of the fact that I spent a good deal of time in helping out with a library work.
well, I'm sure that all the people in the library appreciate everything that you've done for the library, giving us good
The
guidance.
one I might wanted to call attention to specifically, and that is when they decided that we had to increase the capacity of the library when it was in the second unit.
Yeah.
We conceived the idea of a mezzanine floor,
Oh, yeah. Tell us about that.
and we actually got funds to buy the equipment. And then Mr. Saxon, what was his title?
Reuben Saxon was
He was the operating
administrator.
superintendent.
Yes.
He said, we don't have the funds to put it up. And I fiddled around. I said, well, that sounds real strange. Why don't you go down to your boss in Lincoln and find out about that? Well, he said they still don't have the funds. And I remember Dr. McIntyre and I were on the committee together, and they once said, well, if we can't get it put up, we'll bring a couple of screwdrivers and monkey wrenches and come over and put it up ourselves. And at that period, Dr. Moody was acting as the
Acting dean?
he was acting dean. He was
Yeah.
also chairman of the department, I think.
That was
acting.
after Luth left.
Yeah, that's right. And he said, well, let's. I'm going down to Lincoln. Why don't you come along? And we'll talk to Mr. Selleck, who was the acting chancellor there. And we went in and talked to Selleck. That's first the order of business was that Moody saw to that that we could go in and press our case and Selleck listened to our story and then he turned and said, call in whatever this fellow's name was.
George Miller? George Miller?
No, it wasn't that high up.
Oh.
He was up there once and they told us he didn't have the money too. But he was
Oh,
very small.
I know who you're talking about.
Well,
I'll have to think about that.
well,
I
anyway.
remember his name.
At any rate, Selleck called him. He came in and he said, I want this put up. And that's the end of the story right there. Because they did put it up right after that. right.
You had to go clear to the chancellor to get it done.
That's right.
But wasn't that some of it occasioned by the split between Lundy and the camp and the medical campus?
Yeah, but Lundy wasn't about to pay funds for that, I know. But then that was a duty of the operating department, operating superintendent, I think.
Buildings and grounds.
Yeah, buildings and grounds. Because, well, Lundy, I kind of hate to get into Lundy because he was constantly wanting to build up his own image at Lincoln, but he didn't have any part, or didn't want any part of this place, apparently. And he resisted the expansion here, it seemed to me. And I was never so pleased as when Woodson, after one trip to Lincoln, said, well, we finally gotten loose from Mr. Lundy so that our budget comes directly instead of through Mr. Lundy, or through the library, the main library. And that really made a tremendous difference.
That was a great step forward.
Absolutely.
The library never
school.
had enough money until
That's right.
Till then. Till we had a separate budget with the College of Medicine. One of the other things that you've done is to do some work with the Epley Institute. Tell me how that got started,
Well,
the whole thing.
After I resigned, after I was deposed as chairman of the department, because of age, that was in 1960, I was on a year-by-year appointment with the department for 3 years. That was part of the university rules, apparently then. And I taught my classes regularly for those 3 years, and during that time, we had to find somebody to run this Epley Institute, and I was appointed to help discover, or to meet with the people they had discovered and find out what I thought of them. So one day we had a meeting with, had been associate director of Roswell Park or something, but I done Roswell Park. It was Henry Lemon anyway, and it was in Boston. And he appealed to me very much. And he not only knew what he wanted to do, but he knew how to do it. And so he was appointed, I think it was during my last year of teaching. And when he came and started putting up the building, Dr. Holyoke and I think, inspected every board at one end of the building. But at any rate, after he moved in, I got a grant from the American Heart Association for a microscope, an electron microscope. And where were they going to put it? Well, Dr. Lemon said, now, why don't you come over here and we'll pay you from Epley funds as long as you want to stay, and put up your microscope here, and that'll still belong to the department, and I would have a say-so as to where it went if it ever had to move. Well, I was over there, I went over there for 3 years, and I really enjoyed work over there, and I had a number of graduate students that did electron microscopy, and I think we all learned a great deal from that experience. And I was really surprised to find that we had a new director all of a sudden. And Henry, I think, was just as surprised as anybody. Turns out that they had met with Dr. Shubik in Chicago. He was connected with the Chicago Medical School at the time, and he was unhappy, and they wanted a big name man to run the institute, and so they brought him in here and asked Lemon if he was recommended he put on the faculty, and he did, and that put Lemon out of the institute. And at that time, Dr. Schubert, the new director, he said, well, anytime you want to anytime you want to stay here, well, I'd be very happy to have you. And I stayed on for a while, and I have an office. I have a desk over there, I'll put it that way. And I used to advise some of his people occasionally, and talk with them about the kind of work they were doing and what I thought about it, and where I thought they could make improvements. And that's pretty well over the hill now, and I don't do much. I hardly ever go over there, as a matter of fact. I must go over and meet Dr. Cromwell sometime, because I've known him for a long time.
Yeah.
But that was a pleasant experience for me. And particularly while Dr. Lemon was there, and he would drop in and we'd share ideas quite often. And I felt rather badly that it passed into other hands, but I know that it's expanded a great deal since then, and maybe he wouldn't be interested the way it is now. But that was finally they woke up to the fact that that the funds for operating the Epley were actually funds given to the university. So I was being paid without proper credentials or something. At any rate, they told me I had to quit. Well, I had to quit being paid.
See, it took you off the payroll, and they want you to stay off of it. Because that was part of the university payroll, and Lemon apparently thought it was separate funds. Separate funds for everything.
At his disposal. And it worked for 3 years. And of course, during that time, my wife became real bad, and I was really not doing much anyway. So it didn't hurt me at all.
Well,
except it hurt me that she was going bad. Well, you got enough to...
Well, just great. I think we have a nice...
well, it's kind of disjointed.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
I didn't plan any special speech or anything.
We're not supposed to. Now, at the end of this tape, then, I will, if you let me have your corrected biography, then I will read that onto the tape so that it becomes a part of the permanent record. I'll revise this and check it with you again.
All right.
Now, what we need to do is to ask you to sign a release, which...
Well, when you get anything to sign, why, I'll release it.
All right.
Well, I don't know.
There seemed to be a controversy between Dr. Lord and Dr. H. Willard Orr.
That's right.
Well, there's a little bit about it in the Orr files, but what was the...
Well, I think Dr. Lord wanted that
Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Children's Rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Crippled Children's Hospital.
Crippled Children's Hospital. He wanted that to be placed in Omaha, where he was, and Orr wanted it done in Lincoln, where he was.
Yeah.
And both of them thought they were the biggest experts in the business, and Lord got the job here, but as long as he got the job here, Orr wasn't about to take part in any teaching. That was
well, that's what he stayed away from the campus.
Yeah,
I thought it was because he didn't, he and Pointer didn't get along.
Well, that's part of it too, because Pointer backed the other 40.
Well, and
but he became very good friends of Dr. Willard.
No.
which we haven't mentioned. But
No.
Dr. Willard taught down at Lincoln for a long time. They became very friendly, and Mrs. Willard was a very charming woman. They became very friendly with the Orrs, and when they moved up here, why Dr. Orr thought that Dr. Pointer mistreated Dr. Willard, and maybe there was something to it. But Dr. Willard was he was a very great scholar, but he was one of the poorest teachers you about ever could imagine. He just didn't get anything across to students, and he would go through a course. He's supposed to cover certain subjects in a course, which is a semester course, and he'd get about halfway through by the time the time was up. And, you can't teach that way.
No.
And I can still remember Dr. Pointer telling me, he said, listen, Dr. Willard, he's been teaching organology for a long time, but he's not getting anything over to the students. He was a dean at that time. And you're going to have to take over that course. And I apologized to Dr. Willard, but I had to take over the course. I was ordered to. And Dr. Willard said, I understand. He knew where the fine Italian hand was. But they really didn't see eye to eye. They were totally different personalities.
Willard and
Willard, he was a meticulous technician, but he just didn't handle students well. That's all. And I said many times I could tell a student that he was just not getting the material, and he'd have to do something, or he was going to be out of school. And that same person could go over to Dr. He'd thank me for advising him. That same person would go to Dr. Willard, and he'd tell him exactly the same thing, and he'd go out of the place boring mad.
Well, it's just the personality, I guess.
The personal approach is so totally different. But that's where the difference between Orr and Pointer came about, because he thought that Pointer mistreated Willard.
Well, Orr was a cutter man too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he.
So was Palmer Finley. You probably don't know anything about Palmer Finley.
Oh, I know about Palmer Finley.
Well, Palmer Finley, he wanted to be the chairman of the OBGYN. Very well. He was a very brilliant man, as a matter of fact, too. But Dr. Cutter, now I thought they ought to divide that up and have him in gynecology and you know.
I know. McGuigan talks about him all the time.
He delivered my two kids, so I don't remember his name, but Pollard. So you wanted Pollard to be a
Pollard, yes.
And Palmer said, well, if that's the case, I'll just move out. And he did.
He did, yeah.
And Dr. Cutter didn't, he didn't stop him. He hadn't stopped him from, and first thing you know, Pollard was the chairman of the combined department. So he behaved foolishly. But Palmer was a very stubborn man. I've talked to him many, many times. And I talked to his boys a good many times. And he was dominating over those kids. And I think that's part of the reason one of them became a real drunkard and finally died of his excesses. Well, I'm keeping...
Too bad.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Well, this has been great.
Well,
the date is July 20th, and I have asked Dr. Latta to supplement his remarks of July 2nd on a variety of subjects which I felt were important and that I had neglected to talk to him about on July 2nd.
Did you?
Dr. Latta, it's nice of you to give us some more time, particularly since it's my fault that we forgot to talk about this. The legislature in 1927 passed the Basic Science Law, and this required that before an applicant could be examined in any of the healing arts, he must secure a certificate of ability in the basic sciences. And these were anatomy, physiology, chemistry, bacteriology, pathology, and hygiene. Now, you had a long association with the Basic Science Board, and I understand it was unique, and it was a very important board, and I think we'd like to have you tell us about it.
Well, I think it was important. I always thought it was very important to have students have certain basic knowledge of the different features of a body operation before they became licensed to practice any healing art. The biggest trouble we had when these boards were first established was that some members who had been appointed as examiners, members of the Board of Basic Sciences in their state, thought that basic science referred to things which are basic to the healing art to such a degree that they would talk about examining general chemistry or general physiology or comparative anatomy and things subject to that nature. Mm-hmm. And it took quite a bit of understanding and explanation to get the examiners themselves to realize what was the intent of the law. Finally, however, I think practically all of the examiners had such a understanding of the nature of the law and what it was intended to do.
Are you speaking now of the Nebraska Basic Science Board or all of them?
Well, the Nebraska Basic Science Board almost invariably understood what this intent of the law was. But there are some other boards which are members of the National Association of Basic Science Boards, or mm-hmm. I guess it was the American Association, that didn't understand. In our national meetings, we'd go over and over and over on what was the intent of the law. And eventually, there were about 30 states, I think, which had developed basic science boards and examined in the basic sciences. And for a long time, the so-called cults just failed to be able to pass any examination in the basic sciences. And I'm perfectly sure that we kept a lot of really bizarre practitioners out of the state of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And that was also true of other states which had basic science boards. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think now of some of the other features. Well, I recall finally that the Federation of State Medical Boards put up an examination of their own, which is comparable to the National Boards of Medical Examiners. And we had, as a federation, or I should call it federation, the National Board, or American Board of Basic Sciences. Mm-hmm. They they had agreed, almost all of them, to accept the National Board of Medical Examiners, the basic science part of that National Board. Now along come the Federation of State Medical Boards, and they wanted to put on an examination which was similar to the National Boards, and they wanted our board to accept their examination as well. Well, we tentatively agreed to do that, and that almost put our board out of business. And the next step was to have the Federation do all the examining in the basic sciences, and I said, well, we might just as well forget the whole thing and dissolve the Basic Science Board, and the state legislature finally did do that.
And now they accept the National Board.
They accept
What
National
they call.
Boards and the Federation of State Medical Boards exam, either one, and their own exam to license people, medical practitioners in Nebraska. But at the same time, it must be remembered that there are other types of practitioners.